Malthusian cult that they're all in definitely is something to be aware of. They definitely feel like they have the mission to reduce population as part of their prerogative, and their it's like their religion. Okay,
On
here.
YouTube here, we're always teetering on the precipice of permanent banishment, and we're always like on one or two strikes, waiting for a third one. And we have kind of skated for a few years now, just by being one strike short of permanent.
I'm amazed you're still going because in the early days, a video that I made talking about masks and
Yeah.
how ineffective I had learned they were got me in, YouTube prison. The video was removed. So I got off of YouTube years ago and went to BitChute.
Yeah.
And I also did Rumble for a while, but then Rumble, if you want your content to be searchable to the public, you almost have to give up your rights to your video, which I didn't like. So I got off of Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to know where to go these days. I feel like everything ends up being captured.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Rumble, there's some sketchy things about them. We use YouTube. We have a diverse topic range and guest list. So some of them are great for YouTube, but we always end up on the naughty list anyway.
Yeah, speaking of Rumble, I can't get the stream going. I'm going to try to use a different key. Rumble makes it very difficult to live stream as well. It's like always having to change the keys. So I'm checking the Rumble stream real quick. See if we're good now. Oh, good. We're good. Okay, guys, I'm going to hit record and fire this up. Hey, thanks everybody for joining us in chat. We are on LooshTube, as I affectionately call it, sucking our loosh away. But we use it to, reach more people. We'll use their systems against them. We're on Rumble, Sayer G's Unite, Odyssey, and Fakebook today. Okay, here we go.
And we've never even attempted to monetize. So with YouTube, that was never a possibility.
Actually, it's funny. I did try this year to monetize, and we were denied.
I'm shocked.
Mainly, not to monetize to do ads. I would never do that. But to do super chats, so because people always ask, they want to tip us, and it just denied us. So, Jim Lee's in the chat on YouTube. Great to see you here.
Oh, are we live now?
We are live, but I'm going to hit record for the actual podcast now. So here we go.
Excellent. Hi, Jim.
And boom, we're back for another episode of AlphaCast. I'm Mike Winter, and I'm here as always with my champion of truth, partner in crime against the evil overlords, Dr. Barre Lando, coming to you live and direct from the great state of Jefferson, where freedom still reigns supreme, up here on the Smith River, enjoying a bit of snow we had this week here. For those who have orders in with Alfa Vedic, we did just get them out. Shannon braved the snow and was able to get those out today, but we do have some delays due to the weather. Thanks to everybody for your support. If you're new to our channel, the main way that we fund ourselves is through selling our own product. We are self-financed through our own endeavors, and you can find out all about us at alfavedic.com, ALFAVEDIC.com. Super stoked to have Kat on today. This is one of the most important topics out there. It affects us all, and the mass awakening is definitely upon us, because I'm seeing more and more quote unquote normies coming to the understanding that those crisscross clouds in the sky are not natural. So we're going to go deeper into that today. Barre, any housekeeping before I introduce our guest?
No, I want to talk to Kat. We've got some good stuff to discuss, and she's been on the front lines courageously doing some great work here. So let's get it started.
Awesome. Well, complaints of persistent coughs, headaches, and brain fog, among other fogs, from otherwise healthy people are now the norm. The inability to categorize these symptoms within a conventional diagnostic context has forced many of us in the medical field to look out of the box for both answers and solutions. There is now zero doubt that causative agents and culpable parties have been identified by an overwhelming number of researchers and medics worldwide. All one need do is to observe what is visible in most skies on any given day. Quote, chemtrailing or atmospheric aerosoling is a confirmed reality and self-admitting by its perpetrators. Bottom line, we're getting sprayed like pesky bugs with noxious cocktails of heavy metals, radiation, nano-fibers, and quote unquote smart dust. And that is by the great Barre Lando there. A myriad of disabling disorders that share the commonality of central nervous system destruction, ALS, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, to name a few, are now pandemic. For those seemingly less affected with health issues, the toll these same agents wreak on the larger biosystem will spare no one. Intrepid chemtrail activist known as Mellow on her Substack and BitChute channel has had enough and is on a mission to stop this madness. As a mother and homemaker with a BA in communications and aspiring journalist, she became a corporate jet flight attendant for many years. Upon witnessing the adverse effects in her son after adhering to certain quote unquote medical schedules, Kat's eyes were forever open to the perils of blind trust in the pharmaceutical medicine industry. During the great PSYOP of 2020, Kat fought tirelessly on several fronts to help people avoid medical tyranny. Her valiant efforts to expose those who would do harm to our children has now been refocused on an institutionalized practice of such malevolence and magnitude that it defies the imagination, and one for which there is no possibility of opting out. No matter what term is used, chemtrailing, geoengineering, or atmospheric aerosoling, it is a crime against humanity, and Kat is determined to spread the word. On this episode, Kat will share her now viral video of confrontations with actual pilots there that were spraying above her county, as well as local government boards, as part of our deeper discussion to a very sinister and undeniable agenda. Join us today in this for this all-important presentation to expose the truth behind the escalation of chemtrailing in recent decades and how you can protect your family from atmospheric poisoning. Barre Lando, this seems to come up almost daily in our community between you and I. There is no escape. However, there are lots of solutions, which we will dive deep in today.
Yes.
Take it away, my friend.
Yes. And you notice in the write-up there how we use the codes, roll
Yes.
up your sleevers, medical schedules, and we don't want to. We're
it.
always fooling the gatekeepers at YouTube there, since they are robots. Sorry AI, but you're not as smart as us.
As I told you, since we're on live, my computer's been hot. So I can hear the fan churning and churning. So they're paying attention. I know.
They're working overtime. So to start this off, if you'll allow me, I'm just going to read a little quote. And here we go. This is actually a well-known Hopi prophecy that I'm sure most of our audience has heard, and you guys as well. But here we go. If we dig precious things from the land, we will invite disaster. Near the day of purification, there will be cobwebs spun back and forth in the sky. A container of ashes might one day be thrown from the sky, which could burn the land and boil the oceans. So what do you think, Kat? Were the Hopi onto something there?
When you said the spider web spinning through the sky, I mean, my friend and I, FM8, also on BitChute and Substack, I was collecting the spider silk that was falling from our skies twice, and I submitted samples to be looked at under a microscope just because I was curious. I wanted to know, what is this? It does not look like spider silk. So I have my hands in many pots. This is not my first pilot confrontation. This is just the first one to explode. And I think it's because the people are opening their eyes, finally. I think after 2020 especially, they're more open and receptive to, okay, what are some of the things that these conspiracy theorists have talked about? And I want to look into them for myself. And I'm an example.
Yeah. Well, first off, let me give you a proper welcome. Thank you for being with us today. You're just amazing. I've just come on to your work more lately. So I was watching your videos yesterday, and just simply, heroic work. And we want to hear all about it. So why don't you start with your personal story, if you don't mind, how you got into all this. People always love to hear that. And then we'll segue right into all the dark matter, but we'll end with solutions.
You got it.
So we won't be black pilling totally.
No. Okay. So Like most people, I think you're used to working a 9-to-5 job. I was living in Los Angeles for a long time as the corporate jet flight attendant. And it wasn't until I had my son and was suddenly home 24/7, I became a full-time homemaker. And I would be outside. At the time we lived in Fresno, and we'd be on the grass playing outside. And I would watch from morning through the afternoon these grid lines across the sky. And I had never heard anything about, the chems or the contrails or whatever you want to call them. I just, on my own, observed that by the end of the afternoon, we didn't have any more sunshine. The sun disappeared. It'd be a clear, beautiful morning, and then we'd have this white haze. And the first time I heard about chemtrails, I went to the grocery store and I started talking about it. I said, do you see these grids in the sky? Do you notice this too? And the cashier said, yeah, those are chemtrails. And I went, what? And so that was the first time I'd ever heard the term. And of course, then I went and searched a little bit and found Dane Wigington's website and started to kind of learn a little bit about what people were thinking about these things. I remember I put it on social media and I was shut down and made fun of. So I decided, well, I'm going to back away from this. And so I did, but I didn't stop watching. Throughout the years, raising my child, I learned the hard way after many years. We talked about the schedule that a lot of children are on, and we had a lot of different health issues. I don't want to get too much into that here, but that was a slow process of awakening for me because I was so indoctrinated. I was so blindly trusting. They tell you you're going to go to these well visits. It's all about your health and your baby's health. And I did for years. I subjected him to now what I believe to be harmful. So that was a very painful awakening for me. And when you sense that sort of betrayal, I'll never forget learning about what was even in these products and reaching out to a gentleman who had done 4 papers, maybe more, on aluminum and the neurological impacts on mice. And I said, I can't read beyond your abstract. Would you please send me your studies? And he did. And my heart sank. I learned how to read package inserts, which was very tedious. I learned the medical terminology. I poured myself into learning as much as I could about what I had done to him. And I think that's part of the reason I carry so much zest and readiness to stand up now, because once you realize you've been lied to and that you've caused harm to your own family or your loved ones, I will never be silent about it. I just wish that one parent had said to me, hey, you don't have to go to every well visit. You're doing great at home. And I didn't have that support. When I got pregnant, I was one of all my single friends, the first one, still in my 30s, but, and so I didn't have any support. I had to really learn, what is this process all about? What's this natural birth all about? I was very in a superficial world at that time. So long story short, the years pass, then 2020 hits. And so I've already known that there's revolving doors with pharmaceutical industry. Oh, my dad also was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's when I dove into Monsanto because he'd 10-acre property spraying Roundup for my entire life, and I thought maybe that's why, so I just a lot of research and realizing that we had, these harmful products are still on the shelves, despite the harms that have been documented, they have people ghostwriting their studies to say these things are safe and effective. And I really saw that with the C word. Okay. I call it con-vid, if I can say that. Okay. So, in 2020, of course, when we first started hearing the news, we were wiping everything down, really careful. And I have a background, as you know, in communications. So I was an aspiring journalist. And so I also got my massage therapy license at the age of 20. And that's how I got into the private jet world, because then I was training the flight attendants in flight spa and doing supplemental massage and facials. And then I became a flight attendant. That was a wild world because I went from a farm girl to then this world of private jets in Los Angeles. So I was, of course, just living the life. It was a lot of fun. I traveled all over the world and really enjoyed myself. But what was I saying? Oh yeah. So when the news started breaking, I was then going directly to the media telebriefings that the CDC was hosting. And I was really interested in hearing what they had to say. Now, at this time, I knew that there was a possible future of a digital passport of some sort attached to your medical records. So I was paying very close attention because I kind of wondered, is this something here that's going to turn into, you know, and I think what was most shocking is watching people behave like they did. Suddenly everyone's standing on these dots and they're wearing the masks, and the behavior changed so rapidly. I'll never forget, our neighbors said, we can't play in the cul-de-sac anymore. All of our children used to run in the cul-de-sac. And they said, we're going to stay home. We can't. And then we had neighbors shouting, stay home. And social media, I mean, people just shouting at each other. And I thought, this is so surreal. I felt like I was in a twilight zone. And what I found from the telebriefings with the CDC was that it was the people under observation that they had, the symptoms were like non-existent. I mean, they're very mild. I thought, this isn't anything to be afraid of. And so I kept my eyes on that. But I watched how, after the media telebriefings, and I know how television works. I did the internship. I worked for a while at a local station, not a station here, but in Washington. And I know how they try to generate buzz and excitement, and they make a mountain out of a molehill frequently. So I watched the media explode, and I watched doctors, because we knew a lot of doctors in our neighborhood. They were panicking. And I said, well, what's your source? Because the things I'm finding aren't what I'm seeing. So what are you getting? Where are you getting your information? Doctors were sending me YouTube videos. They were watching YouTube videos of people collapsing and falling over. YouTube videos. These are doctors, right? I've lost my confidence in the medical world. I'll tell you that much. I'm like, keep me out of there if I can help it.
Well, just real quick, you have to understand that doctors are just like everyone else older. They're more indoctrinated. I had training on that side of the fence myself. And, I was at Stanford, and you come out and your belief system is that you just came out of this amazing, remarkable, facility with all these millions of dollars and white coats and technologies and things. And if I didn't learn it here, it doesn't exist, and everything else is quackery. And then, of course, you're also put under MK Ultra, stress, mind control, learning under duress kind of symptoms too, or, situation too. So yeah, doctors, it takes a lot for doctors to break free from that.
Yes. Well, I was going to say residency. I've heard that just the hours, the amount of hours they're working and studying and working and studying.
Yeah.
Not sleeping. How do you function? Yeah. And I think, and it almost reminds me a little of military training as well. You break them down, right? You get them tired, exhausted, you push them to the limits, and then you reshape them. And I think once you've endured those experiences, you come out of it feeling like, well, I've earned this title and I have this expertise, and this is my white coat and my credentials here on the wall. And I am the end all be all of information. And that's what I run into a lot, is that, they feel like the experts. And what's most frustrating for me is that when challenged, not a lot of them want to hear it. They just want to blow you off and say, well, that's ridiculous. But if you get down to it, and you already know this, I'm preaching to the choir, they get a lot of their information from the pharmaceutical reps that are pushing their drugs, and from their notes. And now you have, online website, you have charts of this is expected, this is not. If they reach this age and their cholesterol is this much, give them statins. The system. So it's all broken as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, so that got, so indico conv,
COVID, we call it Covidiot erectus.
Okay. I didn't know what I could say because it's YouTube.
No.
Try to be very respectful and not get your show taken down. So I immediately,
or you can just call it the scam for short.
What they did, so what I saw happening was people, okay, that's good, the scam. I saw people behaving strangely. And at this time, it was incredibly stressful. So I just figured out my dad had cancer in 2019. Then we roll into 2020, and we're in the middle of relocating because the air quality in Fresno was not good, right? And we knew that. There's pesticides being sprayed. I have old videos where I had petitions signed to stop spraying glyphosate on school campus while the kids were in school. So I've been very active in trying to have a healthy environment for my child. And of course, you learn about the TV 117, Technical Bulletin 117, the fire retardants in children's bedding, mattresses, boppy pillows. I mean, there's just so many ways we're being poisoned. It's everywhere. So I then got very proactive because when we relocated, it was my son and I who moved before my husband followed us. He had to stay behind to wrap up his job. And we saw that things were starting to shut down. And so we thought we better get out of here now. So we went to our new location pretty early. We had a rental home in the Santa Cruz area. And we wanted to rent before we decided where to buy. And he had a new job set up for that place. And my son and I were alone. And when we would go outside on our scooter or to meet people, people would run across the street and put their masks on. They had the parks roped off. They literally tied off the swing sets and put signs out. Then the beaches, by the beach, they closed the beaches finally. And it still brings me to tears. I'm going to hold it together. That is what ultimately lit the fire under my butt, because how dare they shut down the outdoors, right? Children will motivate me for sure. I felt so sorry for my only child. How are we going to meet people? So at that point, I had gotten off of social media. I was so upset by all of the anger and stay inside. No, don't. It was so freakish. But then I rejoined Facebook. I call it Fart Box, to meet up with a group I'd read about in the local paper they were meeting on the beach to protest the beach closures. And I thought, oh, I got to meet these people. So that then was my first connection with people that became my tribe and my family. And 2020 turned out to be not only the most painful and awful years, but then also one of the most beautiful, because out of that pressure and the insanity, because they were militant in Santa Cruz, like you wear your mask and you follow the arrows and I met my tribe of people, and every weekend we'd go to the beach and there was live music and we'd come together and we'd hug and share food, because I was like, I'm not worried about my risk. I'm not worried about my son's risk. We didn't know really what was going on at the time, but we knew something stunk. It wasn't what they were telling us it was. So that is how I got involved. So then I became I was a local ambassador. Somebody said, you'd be really great with children's self-defense. And I loved Bobby Kennedy and Big Tree, the High Wire. I watched, he was like my saving grace during that time. He was the right amount of frustrated, and he gets hot sometimes like I do. It's nice to have somebody vent and get angry for you, right? And so I worked very hard during that year and the next year to fight back against the forced testing, masking, and the fun ones. So that's a little bit about my background there. And then once you realize just how hard people work to lie to you and manipulate you, and psychologically, signage everywhere, 6 feet, wear your mask, it's like you hear it in the grocery store, you see it, and it's like this ritual. It struck me that it was like a ritual. You put it on, and then, eventually we got to the point where you could then take it off to eat. And I thought, this is just so ridiculous. Do people not see how ridiculous this is? And I made a conscientious effort finally in June of 2020. I said, I'm not wearing a mask anymore. And my husband said, because my husband had said, oh, the masks won't last because they don't work. And he said, there's all these studies on influenza and masking. So I looked into all those studies prior to the COVID studies. And I was like, now I just can't wear one. I can't even pretend anymore. It's so infuriating. And that got me into a lot of trouble. And I started out, I was very polite with people. And at the time I had a really nasty rash, papupustular stuff. It was so depressing. I looked like it was like a little girl said to me, what's wrong with your face? And I was like, I think it's stress. And I was, wearing the mask. And I said, I'm done. And I tried to be very polite about my right not to wear one. I didn't want to bother anyone. I just wanted to be able to pick out my own food. I didn't want to do Instacart. And so I faced off finally. A lot of people just refused to listen, shut their doors on me, full of fear and anger. And so it just inspired me even more to fight back, because I couldn't take the insanity anymore. So.
Yeah, the movies about the zombie apocalypse actually start to make more sense after going through that, don't they? I mean, it's like a bad science fiction movie. And I get it. They're playing on our fears, and they have the media in on it and everything else, the doctors. But my bottom line is shame on us for falling for it. And fortunately, we live up in an area that's a little bit more. I don't like to use labels, but conservative, just, more people that are off the grid and everything. So we didn't have to endure what people in Santa Cruz or the Bay Area had to go through. But when I'd go down to visit my kids in Santa Barbara, I'd go in the health food store there, and I'd be the only one without a mask, and attacked, constantly.
Yes.
And I just basically, shouted F off, leave me alone. And, it's the time, I get it. We don't want to be, attacking each other, but the time for being polite is over too. Because when they're actually trying to kill you, and if the zombies are actually contributing or enabling that, then, they have to wake up. They need a slap across the face.
You've seen the CDC, the scenario, the exercise, I think it was called like zombie pandemic or something like that, or it was like a preparedness 101 document. I did a read through because they put together this cartoon. And then you see little signs where you have this, the Coro spiky blue ball, right? And I went, there's too many parallels. And also I was looking into they have all sorts of playbooks and scenarios. And when you start to see how they've actually prepared for these sorts of psychological operations, you go, okay, now I get it. I mean, even the MPOX, right? They had this whole, I have the printout right here. It's the Biorisk Innovation and Risk Reduction Framework, a global framework. They said it was going to arrive around May of a certain date, and I could look and see. It's been a while since I looked into it, and it did. Suddenly it was in the news. And I went, this is like according to the playbook. This is so crazy. And so it's there if you open your eyes. It's there if you are willing to look. They always tell you, is what I'm finding. And some people say it's the revelation of the method, it's karma, it's something like that. But it's the most fascinating thing for me to realize, whoa, we're living in this. What is this? Right? What is this? So I have been on this insatiable quest to figure out what is this and what is going on around me. And I have got, as I said, I not only did I activate there to fight for my child's right not to have to be subjected to this stuff, but my friends, I helped a lot of people around California. They were, as part of the CHD team, I worked with a small group helping teachers and parents of students who didn't want to be subjected to multiple nasal swabs and all of that. And so I was helping them. They had a right to refuse because all of these at the time, as you know, were under the environmental use authorization, right? So technically experimental. You have a right to refuse experimental interventions, but we weren't being honored the right to refuse. And so I fought so hard on those issues. But then that is when I had more of a massive awakening. I then learned, I started reconsidering 911 and Building 7. Then I learned about the group of engineers and architects who were calling for an independent investigation. And I mean, I have been drinking from the fire hose. My mind has exploded infinite times. It's absolutely overwhelming, but I couldn't stop. And it's really funny because actually at one point my parents called me, very close with my family, in 2020. And they said, we're really worried about you. We think you're kind of losing it and you're going into all these conspiracy theories and we're very concerned and we think you should probably get some help. And I'm so grateful for a friend of mine who, when I started awakening to this whole con thing, he said, oh, we were awake since 2001, join the club. And we were so isolated and we couldn't talk about it. And he helped me get through. And it's amazing now because I pushed just hard enough to spare my family the experimental intervention. And then they watched their friends around them having different issues. And I will tell you now, in the last year and a half, both my parents couldn't be more proud. And they just said, you were right. We couldn't believe it. You were right. And they are coming around. I mean, now my dad is writing to his representative saying, what are you going to do about these lines in the sky? So I'm so grateful. I never gave up who I was. I spoke my truth. A lot of people have thought I was batshit crazy, including my husband. We did not agree. Those were tough years for us.
Yeah, it tears a lot of families apart. And I can tell you too, my wife and myself started kind of having our eyes open in the mid 70s. So we moved to our first off-grid location. We had our kids at home, didn't do any of the jibber jabbers with our kids. And then I left a good paying regular job in the conventional system and went to naturopathic college. I mean, we got so much shit from our friends. Some were mad at us, some were worried about us, and what the hell are you doing? And finally, we just didn't even want to take that anymore, and we moved to Fiji.
Oh, you did? Is that? Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. Anyway, just so you know, I relate to what you're, sharing with us. It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, we've all gone through the dark night of the truther soul. And
Right.
the beautiful thing about now is that communities have developed, especially since 2020, to support each other, right? Online communities and in-person communities. We do an event called Music in Sky where all these people come together and it's like a catharsis, right? We all celebrate the trials and tribulations that we had to go through the fire of truth. And what we all come to realize, and I think it's the great theme of this show, is that in the end, it's the journey that matters. I was saying in chat, you can go down 1 million rabbit holes. They never end. They will never end.
And they all connect. They all connect.
Yep. And you can feel quite powerless at points with that, right? When it seems so daunting and massive. But in the end, what we always stress is that it's the internal knowledge of our true power that transcends all. And why I always like to bring up tons of real life examples of folks like that, survived incredible situations in the past, whether it be in a concentration camp or through insane wars and stuff, that were untouched through their own, as Jason Brashear says, in their own reality tunnel, because of their ability to come to that inner understanding of how reality works. And I know this is getting maybe a little off topic, but that's something we always stress. And I think that's going to be one of the solutions today. But isn't it interesting when we relate to 2020 and how and I think it's a good segue into the topic of the lines upstairs, because so many people closed their common sense and their just common awareness and their ability to look and observe what was so nonsensical. This idea that there was an invisible boogeyman that was going to get you if you stood up at your table, if you took off your mask. But Amazon boxes were impervious to it, but small stores were definitely, the virus loved the little mom and pops, right? Like all of that nonsense, and so many people, and of course it was heavily politicized, closed their logical mind and their true inner knowing to that, to follow lockstep with the agenda. Why is that? There's a lot of psychological stuff involved. And so we saw that massive worldwide phenomenon, and those that could see were like, whoa, can you not wake up and see how crazy this is? Well, we now have that, obviously, with what we're talking about today.
Yes.
And so what made the difference in 2020 to me was people like you that had the guts to just talk about it, to be open and talk about it. And that's what we're doing here today, because the more that we're just open and not afraid to speak our truth, the more that will reach new folks that will then will open up that inner awareness to finally see the light that's inside them. And then that will open up all the other rabbit holes that all connect.
Yep.
Well, it's funny. During 2020, I was watching the lines in the sky all over Santa Cruz as well. So that was when I started learning how to use Flight Radar 24, which is that flight app where you can track the aircraft. I wanted to know who's flying over, and also I'd heard that the FBI sets up shell companies to surveil activists. And because I was very active, I thought, well, maybe I want to just know who's above me. And so that was also and my son loved it. He loved like looking at different aircraft and helicopters, military planes. So that was where I learned how to use that, which is a wonderful tool. And at some point I will host a meeting for people, because I really want to empower people with the ability to read the skies on this app, just to look for what's a normal pattern over my house. how can I identify who's coming from where and going where? And then it helps us piece together this puzzle, because I don't think we're always told, or we're not always told about what's happening. And so the more observant you can be of your surroundings, I am never bored. I can just be entertained by what's happening in my own county, from carbon capture scams funded by Gates to the spider silk dumping from the sky and figuring out what that is. And then right now we even have a Canadian company that's doing surveys to get a log of all the rich minerals that might help us with our climate goals, And so I'm tracking so many things. And if people just looked around in their own backyard, the global issues can feel really heavy and overwhelming, and you feel like, what can we do? And somebody save us. But actually, you can take action in your own county. There's something happening in your county that you could be focusing on, putting your energy into, and making a difference. Because what I'm finding is things roll from the top down. I remember the templates that rolled out to all the schools. Here's the reopening guidelines. You take the blood money, and you can reopen if you publish these reopening guidelines and you follow our protocol, which is this, and this, right? And then eventually maybe this. And so I'm finding that it's like a rolled out template, and everyone's just going through the motions. Like, oh, we're going to do this. Oh, we're going to take the check. Oh, and nobody's challenging that system. So I want to say a couple things I want to talk about too, is when you talk about being poisoned, this is something I also want to get out there. Under the guise of protecting public health, as usual, they have been also, and I know that this might have been covered before by you, Jim Lee apparently has covered this before, they've been spraying us with something called adulticides. Isn't that an interesting name? And those are organophosphate pesticides. And this pilot that I confronted is not my first pilot. I drove out to Sacramento, to McClellan Airport, to confront a pilot who had been spraying down near, just west of us.
So was it through this app that you were able to track him?
Yes. What happened was they give you spray alerts, but not a lot of people are privy to this. When I found out that they were spraying people with adulticides to kill mosquitoes, I thought, well, let me look into this. I called one of the managers and I said, what are you spraying? He told me the name is called dibrom. And the active ingredient is naled or naled. I might mispronounce that. I read everything. And I looked into the health issues there, and I thought, this is bad for bees, aquatic life, and humans and butterflies. What are we doing? And I watched them spray over an ecological reserve, and that just blew my lid. And so I tracked this pilot over and over, and I said, he's flying again. And finally, I had enough there too. I drove a couple hours to get to the airport, hoping to catch him before he took off. I missed him because right when I got there, I saw that his little transponder popped up on my phone. And so I had to sit and wait for a few hours. And then I was by myself, and I thought, and it was dark, and I went, well, it's now or never. And I had printed out a 3-page description of all the issues and concerns that I had for what he was spraying us with. And he was so sweet and oblivious that I didn't call him out too heavily, but I shared with people what happened. But he really believes in what he's doing. And he's relying on the scientists that are paid by these mega chemical corporations. He works for one of these chemical corporations, and he's been doing this for 20 years or so. This is his livelihood, and he thinks it's perfectly safe and harmless, that they have it calibrated to a certain amount. It's incredible. And he did tell me, he said, did you know this is what was sprayed on people as nerve agents in World War I? And I went, you know this, but you now think it's calibrated, so it's just enough to just kill the mosquito, but not the bees? I said, how do you know you're not killing bees? He goes, because I spray them all the time. That was his answer. So there's so much that we have to wake up to. And I decided I'm going to tackle this in person with these people. Right. And there's a lot we can talk about with all of that.
But
so
I'll just say, they say it right in the word, adulticide. Yeah. Side being the suffix means killer.
Yes, right.
Adult
that's the
killer.
Joke. I mean,
adult killer.
It's right in your face. It's right in your face. And so, but if people don't realize they're being sprayed with these things that might give them irritation, eye irritation symptoms, and they think I'm sick, and then suddenly, they go in for a test, right? And the test companies are making a killing, and what struck me is, personally, I realized, oh, I get it now. They poison us and then offer their diagnostics and their solutions to, put a Band-Aid on our symptoms. And that's the game, quite simply. we're being
And
poisoned,
they
and
also
then they're pushing
isolate
their product.
certain regions for a beta test.
I'm
A
sure.
few years ago, there was a region in a remote eastern part of Oregon, and everybody in that area for a solid year was just sick. Everybody.
Awful.
And it was all, they were getting the bejesus sprayed out of them.
Yeah.
Here we noticed a couple years ago that, like clockwork, every time the rain is about to happen,
Mhm.
they start spraying. The rain comes down, everybody gets symptoms.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and then of course we have the fog, and so this is maybe they have some engineering rationale or something, but no, it's genocide.
I've been documenting because I'm trying to figure that all out. And the more that I learn, the more I realize this is manufactured. This is not natural. And so I'm leaning very much into what you're saying. It's quite clear to me now that we have been inundated with and surrounded by poisons and toxins, and the regulatory agencies have failed us. They all need to be dismantled. And I've gotten to the point, in fact, before I confronted this pilot, I was feeling really helpless because it's so much, right? There's just so much happening. It's like, how do we address all of it? And I retreated to the mountains in 2022. So now we're in the mountains. I started a garden. I wanted to get away from the city. Santa Cruz felt so dark to me. I call it Satan Cruz. I'm sorry, folks, but I mean, it just felt so dark to me. And so we moved to the mountains. I started a garden for the first time. I, didn't really know what I was doing, but I just had to start somewhere. And I also got some chickens, and I've been hatching my own chickens, and just you got to start somewhere.
I hope you've had them tested for bird flu.
No, never. In fact, I like to joke, they're registering chickens, as you probably know, all over, which is so ridiculous to me. And there's a funny
and
little
then they do a phony test, which doesn't tell you anything. It's just like the phony scam test. And then they say, oh, we found a bird with it, so we got to kill birds. And then in the news, it makes it sound like they all died of bird flu, right?
They cull them. And here's another thing I found out. Tom Vilsack, who is the Secretary of Agriculture, I hope I got that right. He also sits on the CCC Bank, which stands for some kind of a bank, okay? Some kind of a federal government bank. He's the one who authorized $1.3 billion from this bank to then test animal farms for this bogus, fraudulent piece of baloney virus. And then he authorized an additional $800 million to test dairy cows. So then our raw milk is suffering, right? Our eggs were no longer on the shelves for a period. Now the prices have skyrocketed. This is all by design.
Well, the raw dairy out in Fresno there?
Yes, I know. I loved Raw Farm. I didn't.
They're not selling now.
Well, it's sad. I had some friends reach out to him, and it sounds like he's pretty in with it. He's like, oh, I'm testing and I'm doing all the things I need to do. And I said, what we need to do as individuals is, if we're not growing our own and we really love these smaller farms, we need to encourage these farmers to just stop playing the game, stop participating. And as far as I'm concerned, it's very easy for farmers to just take the blood money from the state and say, okay, I'll take the loan and I'll kill my herd. And it's awful. It's unforgivable. There's been over 100 million animals now that have been culled, not dead because of a fake virus, but culled because of fraudulent testing. It's a joke. And now what they're doing is they're monitoring cattle with this special little, it's like a whole Bluetooth connected,
right.
temperature. And guess who helped fund that? Gates.
I'm going to guess Gates.
Gates is always involved in every aspect of everything you can find.
Buying up all the farmland and pushing all the new technocratic food development. And it's interesting that it's the cattle and the chickens and the livestock, but what about all the other birds and stuff? They seem to be fine. Pigeons, and they're good, but it's interesting that's where our food comes from. That's always attacked.
We know this. It's an attack on our food and our smaller farms. They're going after small farmers. It's just so bogus. And I cover a lot in my Substack with regard to all the ways that they are infringing on our property rights and our right to just be free. And there's so many ways that they're infringing. And again, I said to you earlier, you feel like a caged animal sometimes, and that is why. Oh, the puppy. And that, it's the
my
best.
daughter.
Your daughter. Oh, she's sweet. I've got a son and a daughter who are furry, and then I've got some chicks right now that I just hatched in our closet. So I'm doing what I can to counter all of this baloney at home, but then I'm still putting stuff out there, and I'm so thrilled that my interaction with this pilot got the attention that it did. It was shocking. I had my friends were texting me saying, you're here, you're on this, and now you're here. Because I've shared a lot of this stuff before. I've been documenting for a long time, and suddenly it seems like people are ready to pay attention. And I really want to encourage them. I want to show them how you can read the skies, and you can go talk to these people. I think we have to interact with them. We have to get to know, who are you? Do you know what you're doing? And figure that out.
Now, you have some videos that have gone pretty viral lately. Huh? Were you guys going to show some of those, or are we just talking about them?
I mean, I can screen share. I just want to say one thing here. I think the thing that we try to always show and uncover on our show is the false religion of scientism. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because we were talking before we went live, Dane Whittington, who's been, a fearless warrior for truth around this topic for so long. He was just recently presenting again to the Shasta County Board, was it Board of Supervisors or whatever there, about the chemtrail issue. And I was laughing at how so many of these sort of mainstream or kind of, I don't want to skip political, they're kind of maybe more left leaning, but they definitely go with the same thing that the consensus is set. Real scientists with real credentials that are peer reviewed have already proven that chemtrails don't exist, blah, 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 blah. You hear this. And that was the same thing during Covidian erectus, during the scam, and same thing related to now stuff around the livestock bird flu stuff. It's always what they go to. And what I love is that people are finally coming to an understanding that this is the religion of our time, that peer review has been completely debunked. It is a completely captured system that is corporatized. There has been amazing studies out of Harvard where people put in fake articles that had the right credentials that got peer reviewed because there's money at play, and then there's ego at play. The whole institution around like all the universities and stuff is captured. And so I love that this is how we break it down. It's a cultural renaissance. It's a coming to an understanding that we need to redo it all. Yes. And in doing that, people can start to think for themselves, and real science can start to happen, because we are not science deniers, right?
Well, Bear? A good sign of the times is some very prestigious Ivy League colleges are now advertising, trying to get students. So what does that tell you? And those, in the past you could barely get in, right? So the worm's turning. So please go on, Kat.
Oh, I was going to say, something that I was looking into, I was going to say, I print these things out too. I you want to archive as much as you can. I've learned the hard way, because these sites disappear. But, early onset dementia and Alzheimer's grow for younger American adults. And this was published in 2020. And you have to wonder why. And it's probably a mixture of these things. But then also the rain samples, I've got a whole stack of all my samples. Every single time there's aluminum, and an assortment of other metals. And so there began my journey to figure out, well, what are the safe limits for inhalation and ingestion of these metals? Like, maybe where are they coming from? I wasn't really entirely sure, because there could be factories or other things that contribute to this. But I live again out in the mountains. And so this is where I wasted a lot of time. I spent a lot of time trying to find all those limits. And I was reading like 300-page studies and trying to figure it out and breaking down the numbers. And then finally I realized, well, we have the California Air and Resources Board. We have these air pollution control districts. Why don't I ask them what they know and what they've tested for? They were clueless. I mean, our air pollution control district, come to find out, number one, didn't want to return my calls or answer my questions. I had to get my supervisor to get in touch with her. And so then they were three-way communicating. And I said, why doesn't she tell me herself, right? So there's a lot of denial, a lot of paper pushing happening, I think. And so then I got in contact with the California Air and Resources Board to ask them the questions. And I had the senior staff pollution specialist and all these other, things, all these other titles. And he was unaware. And I said, and he said, well, we only test for these things if we know that there is an emission of concern. And I said, well, don't you think it's an emission of concern when you think about the flares, which have aluminum and zinc, as propellants to disperse the silver iodide. It's not just silver. And I'm getting these ranges. This is a signal. Scientists would see this as a signal and they'd say, maybe we should start doing these tests. Maybe we should look at the cumulative impacts of these metals. And, after being shamed, talking about geoengineering and chemtrails for many years, I reached this point when I moved out here. I was doing my garden and I was watching it happen. It was heavy duty out here. And I went, I'm so sick of being quiet about this. And so I started a Telegram channel. I named it, California Chemtrails to be catchy. And, but I know that if you really want to reach people, you want to say geoengineering as solar radiation management, right? But, I just decided it's time to put it out there. It's time for people to start talking about it and not be embarrassed to talk about it. Like, start observing, let's document together. Let's find out what's going on together. And, when you get these communities together, people are sharing information. And a girlfriend said, this is, I learned about the NOAA library. And she said, I think this is your county. And there was an arrangement between the Weather Modification International Group, which is the who hired the pilots, and the Turlock and Modesto Irrigation District, which rely on all of this seeding. They've been doing it for 30 years, I found out. And that's what I've been pursuing for quite a while.
And when you consider that aluminum is just one of a whole host of other elements that have one thing in common, they're all neurotoxins. And then in my profession, when I started, decades ago, things like ALS were a rarity. Nobody had it. I had like one case. 30 years later, everybody's got it. Everybody's getting MS and, Parkinson's and senile dementia and Alzheimer's. And so in the medical profession, we're taught to think very compartmentalized. You have an affliction, so therefore it's a separate entity existing out in space somehow. And if you just connect the dots, it's very easy to understand that what happened between then and now, where all these things are epidemic, is that the neurotoxins are destroying our nervous system. Some people will have a predisposition to let it get the neuromuscular junction, more than the myelin sheath. So they'll get diagnosed with ALS instead of MS and so forth. But it's all the same thing. Our nervous systems are being systematically destroyed, and they know it. We could go off on a tangent as far as what our neurology means on other levels of depth, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
Well, also, can I and I'm curious to ask you on the testing here, they're using particulates. So these are on a micron level. And I know that the agencies don't even test for this. Have you done any independent testing on that level?
On a nano level?
Yeah.
No, I have only taken my rain samples and sent them into Campbell Analytical, which is like a CLIA certified lab. I forget the details, and they tested it as wastewater. Now, I don't know how you would test for the nano. I think however much it accumulates is what you get, right? Whether it's nano or larger particles or a clump of metal, I mean, you're detecting a certain amount of it, right?
Offhand, I don't know what kind of individual test could, determine a nano accumulation or not, but we know that's what they're using. And we also know that those find their way into the tissues of the body more readily.
Oh, and think about our plants. We've had some oak trees that just fell right over. And it's funny, there's so many people that don't want to get back to you with your questions. I reached out to somebody who had talked about oak trees that were dying, or I said, these look like they're rotting. Can you tell me what's happening? Because again, I'm not an expert. I'm just curious. When I see something, I document it, and then I ask questions about it, right? So again, I'll say, I'm not an expert. I've done a lot of research. I put a lot of time into this, but I want others to look at this with me. I want agencies like the California Air and Resources Board to take this seriously. I want our EPA to take this seriously. And as you know, again, they're not really looking out for the health and safety of everybody. So it's really on us to figure out what the hell is going on. And if they're not going to do anything about it, then we need to do something about it. I'm done waiting. I'm done waiting for a lawsuit or
Yeah.
a politician or, you know, a magical, I'm done waiting for unicorns. I feel like people need to get after this themselves.
Not that one man can fix it, but hopefully Bobby gets confirmed today because he's the one guy that's actually talked in public about chemtrails. You know, you bring up oak trees dying, and then I did a certification in the ag department in Oregon State up here. And of course, they're trying to, you know, get at the bark beetles that are killing you know, all the plants are dying in trees, and of course the beetles are just there opportunistically after the
Yes,
fact when the trees are already dying. So
thank you.
now they're out in the forest spraying the beetles.
And well, and all the herbicides they spray too for these, they call it the social and ecological resilient landscape, you know, and they're out there dumping herbicides and Roundup on our federal land and it's just like, I make it stop.
Well, we
Make it stop.
discussed this on a previous show recently, but I brought up the Dust Bowl, you know, that came out of the 20s and 30s with our infatuation with chemicals and what it did, and now we've got a worldwide Dust Bowl. The topsoil being completely depleted, the microfauna completely, the bioaccumulation and all the microfauna of all these nanoparticulates, which is destroying the entire soil biology, right? And that's why these trees are rotting. Their communication systems have been completely disrupted. Not to mention that we have in these particulates, and you shared an amazing link on your Substack with me talking about not only the carcinogenic properties of these, but also the properties related to initiating fires more readily, right? And so we've seen that with the fires. We've seen it with all. So yeah, like it's really incredible. And I think one thing too, it's confusing to people, and Jim's in the chat here, and he does a really good job of explaining this, is that there's lots of different operations happening.
Yes.
It's not just chemtrails, like a singular operation. There's bunker fuel operations off the coast. They're putting it in the commercial fuel. They're using specific military operations. There's private operations, you know, there's corporate operations. So there's, like you said, there's so much going on. It's hard to wrap our head around. But what I like is you took one specific issue above your head and focused on that. And then I do want to touch a little bit later into the lawfare and like some of the stuff we know about that maybe a lot of people aren't aware of on the law side. But as Barre was hinting at, I'd love to go into specifically in what you were tackling recently above your head and the action you took, which was quite inspiring.
Yeah. Well, tracking flight radar and having started the chemtrail channel on Telegram, all of our community members were talking about all the, you know, we were sharing studies and papers, and that's when I learned about the NOAA library, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They have a list of non-federal weather modification projects. And so I've been really trying to encourage people to, well, take your own rain samples for one, but then also look through the 1,000+ entries and see if there are any projects that pertain to you, because at the very least, you know, get to know what's going on over your heads in your own county. Okay. In our situation, our board of supervisors were unaware. And according to a California code, which I don't have on me now, but according to one of the California codes, the weather modification companies should have notified our county supervisors, but they didn't, according to my supervisor who I was in contact with about this. They should have done that. They did not do that. So they were oblivious to what was happening over our heads. This is being done by counties to the west of us for their hydroelectric power. They are power and electric. I mean, water and power. So it's a very actually lucrative business for them. So they are the ones paying Weather Modification International. So actually Weather Modification is doing a job for them. So really what I do need to do is get after the people of TID, Modesto and Turlock Irrigation District combined, and go after that. And for a while I was we were working on strategies, like how are we going to build some evidence, and how can we, you know, we're reading through all the different reports and doing Public Records Act requests, and it gets really tiring. You know, again, I had the spider silk situation. I had the carbon capture scam out here. Raynet's covered that with me before. So I'm doing a lot of different things in my county because I don't think anyone else seems to be noticing, right? And so I'm like, well, I got to cover this and I got to cover this. And so I let some of this stuff slip a little bit. And of course, their contract typically goes from November through April each year. And I've been calling it out and trying to get people on board, and I've wanted to have some meetings and get people together, but there was not a lot of interest. Now there is. But it was one of those nights where we knew a Pineapple Express was on the way, and we've had some flooding. We had a train derailment last year. You know, I've been trying to say, folks, you know, take pictures, get, you know, evidence of any flooding damage that you're experiencing, because why on earth would they be seeding during a Pineapple Express? We had these weather alerts. That's what the other thing. This drives me crazy. Just like Convy, getting all the alerts, like wear your mask, it's on the rise, get your vax today. We were getting weather alerts like tornado, go down to the lowest floor, take shelter. I'm like, a tornado in California? Really? And now I see this abusive emergency alert system, and I can't escape it, right? I'm like, I'm out in the country. I've got conservative peeps around me, right? It's nice. I can't escape the bullshit. So anyway, that was another thing I noticed, but
I'll just say, yeah, in the end, the ultimate goal is the grid of fear.
Yeah.
And that, right. And so when they can continually keep people, the citizenry, in constant fear of now it's the weather stuff, right?
And
like
the alarms on your phone. I turned it all off. Turn those things off. Your neighbors will tell you if something's wrong. They've got their radios going, right? It's and turn off the darn television already, please. Like I'm out of the loop with all the stuff that's happening. I get enough updates from my husband or from a friend here and there. If it's really important, I'll learn about it. But it's such a
because it's in the end, it's all of this is about resonance, and it's about controlling our internal resonance that actually creates the reality spectrum around us. And this is the grid that they're creating, and this relates to the towers, to the smart stuff, to the spraying, to all of that is a control grid, right?
Yes.
And so first and foremost, control of your emotions, control of your own power is going to do much more for you than being constantly aware through all your these alert systems.
One thing that I've come at, what I love, is I no longer live in fear. I'm not afraid to speak my truth or call out different individuals or players anymore, because we've got to start talking about all the harms and who's behind it. And if my time comes, I've had probably now 20 people say, be careful, watch your back, you better start carrying, you know. And I just said, if my time's going to come for whatever reason for that, well, then you all know it was nefarious, because I have a zest for life, right? I mean, I love my life. I love my family. I love where I live and my animals and my nature. But no, so yeah, I forgot. I don't know where I was.
So we were talking about tracking the flights, and and I'd love to, yeah.
So I looked into the company. So you get a contract like this, and you get the map, and I got a list of the players, you know, and it showed me, you know, this is called the Upper Tuolumne River Weather Modification Project. And so then you look into it, they show you a map. They talk about this is airborne glaciogenic seeding techniques will be used to treat the specified target areas in the Upper Tuolumne River watershed. Seeding will be accomplished by, and they give you the breakdown. You can find over, again, 1,000 different reports like this for different parts of California. There's Idaho, Colorado, Wyoming, even some in Texas. And they'll say they're doing it for precipitation enhancement or to increase snowpack, okay? Which all sounds fine and dandy until you realize that their environmental impact report, they've been doing this again for over 30 years, and they're basing this ongoing seeding operation on an outdated 1990 environmental impact report, which said, we're going to be seeding over Yosemite, and we're going to be seeding over these natural wilderness areas, and we hope and think that it should be okay. And when we test for the silver in the environment, it doesn't really seem to be violating anything. Where's the follow-up? Where's the follow-up, right? It's ridiculous. So I am calling on our CARB, California Air Resources Board. They're focused on carbon, right? They've got their carbon plans by 2030. They want carbon to reach a certain level of zero, you know. And I'm going, their environmental agencies, their focus is so lost and skewed right now. And so I'm saying, come back to these, tell me why.
Back to reality.
Come back to reality. And so for me, that night that I confronted this pilot, I heard him above me. I just dropped my son off for an overnight, which is actually the reason I could go out to it anyway, because my son wasn't home. And so I dropped him off. And I heard him over my head because I know the sound now. Okay, you get used to the sound. Once you start connecting to the aircraft, I'm not joking. I know when there's like a military type helicopter above me. I know that different types of aircraft begin to sound familiar. And so I heard him above and I was like, oh, because I've been telling my girlfriend, who's just as pissed off as I am, I said, we got to go together. We got to confront that pilot. And so I was like, oh, it's too late to go out now because it's an hour away, the Modesto airport. So I got ready for bed. And then at like 10 o'clock, I heard him again. And I went, that mother weffer. And I called my friend. She was
literally a weffer, World Economic Forum stooge.
Yeah, no. So I called her. She was sleeping. So I reached out to a friend of mine who's been interested in this same thing. And I said, hey, you want to go for a ride? Let's go to the airport. He's out there seating again. And he said, I'll be there in 25 minutes. So we went together in the middle of the night and we waited for him to land. And I didn't know if we'd be able to reach him because it's all dark, right? There's no business is not open to the public. So it's dark. I wasn't really sure if we would be able to see him. So I'm looking along the windows, right? I'm walking along and I'm going, and I saw a line guy. These are the gentlemen that help the aircraft. They greet the pilots. They, let him in and out. And I said, hi. And I waved through the window and he was like, oh, hey. And he came up and I just said, hi, I'm here to see 904DK, which is the tail number, the registration number. By the way, I want to teach people how to find the registration number for the aircraft. So I said, I want to speak with 904, the crew. And he said, oh, okay. And I said, can I use your bathroom? He's like, sure. And I beeline for the bathroom where I kind of, I was like, I got in. And I told my girlfriend, I said, when you wake up in the morning, you're going to shit your pants because it was like, 12:30 in the morning or something. So pardon my bad language there. I'm sorry. But I did say that. And then I texted my other friend. I said, I'm in. And so he came and stood outside because all the doors were locked and the pilot came inside. And that was where I didn't know what I was going to say. But you know what I really do want out of all of this? I want to reach these people. I don't want to just get hot and pissed off and call people names. I actually now, because I've already done that before, I want to reach you. I want you to know. I want you to know who you're impacting. I want to reach your human side. Sorry. So I stayed pretty calm for me, which is great. Sorry. So I'm glad at how it went down, other than he was a little, like whatever lady. And I know what you think and believe. And I tried. No one can say I didn't try.
Well, I've got and I appreciate, this is, such an emotional thing for all of us because it's so tough when you've got individuals that this is their job to poison, and it's like, it's just such a disconnect, right? And it's hard as parents, especially, that we have these little loved ones that are out, just want to play outside in their playgrounds or enjoy nature. And there are these criminals above us doing this. I have it queued up here, the page that really highlights and illustrates all of this. I could do a screen share, and so people can see sort of how this went down. I hope I have it set so you can hear the audio. I've had problems with that. I might have to turn my mic over to it, but here, let me do that real quick. And let me know if you can see this. Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I love this post because you lay it all out here so beautifully, Kat. So basically how you've been tracking the cloud seeding flights and you've been taking rain samples. And then how you've submitted several Public Record Act requests, and like you said, engaging with the Air Pollution Control District and California Air and Resources Board. And of course, they're clueless. Here is the report you stated, right, that you talked about where you sent it to McCampbell Analytic Incorporated, and look at the aluminum and barium.
This is one of like 20 samples. Yep. It's just,
Strontium. Oh, that's lovely. And then, so then here is the app you use, right? It's Flight
Mhm.
Radar 24.
Yes, and
And
I find it easier to use on a browser than the app itself. So I just go to a browser and I've zoomed in on my map and I've deselected any aircraft I might be tracking. And I'm ready to go. If I hear something, I'll take a look and see who it is. And I check
yeah.
it frequently for other activity too. I'm looking at just to see what's coming where and anyway.
So really cool. I mean, that's like a pretty powerful tool. I'm definitely grabbing that because, man, at nighttime sometimes we have the same thing. It's like out of nowhere we're hearing planes above us, and we're out in the middle of nowhere too. And we have a little airport here, and I know all the guys who fly here. So I'm definitely getting this app. And so then we continue going down, and then we've got the you see where basically it's a private owner, right? And it tells you what the plane is and everything. So then you decide to jump out of bed, get your friend, and go to the airport here in Modesto.
Mhm.
So this is the so it's the so this is a private airport, right?
Well,
That they're
it
flying.
appears to be. I mean, I think it can be used by anyone who's coming and going. I honestly, I don't really know if it's private. It felt private. It was dark and locked, but I don't know. It's a small airport. Let's put it that way. I don't think any commercial flights go out of there.
So this is now the audio where you confront the gentleman. And is it true now that he said he was someone he wasn't, or he denied who he was, or did I read that wrong?
No, no. He didn't tell me his name. I asked him. He said, "I'm not going to tell you." And he had a co-pilot too, but I'm referring to the chief pilot, the PIC, pilot in command, and then they've got the second in command. And I wanted to know his name. And Jody Fisher, though, is the chief pilot of the Weather Modification Inc., or also called International, right there. And I've called multiple times to speak with him. And but now with some time now, my husband gave me a little guidance, because now he used to not believe me that cloud seeding was happening. Even when I had the documents in front of me, he said, "No, I need it. I don't believe it." And but now he understands. I think when more people start to accept that that's a possibility, then you've got the naysayers who will eventually come around. That's my hope, is that people can start, it's really happening, folks. It's
So
really
here's a bit
happening.
of the audio of you approaching him. So your friend took video.
From the
Uh,
outside. So he was outside the locked doors, and that was me inside. The line guy is in the middle, and the pilot is in front of me. And I am explaining, I gesture a lot. I'm explaining something at this point, and I'm glad he took this video because it shows me inside speaking with them. And I'm glad he was there, because I didn't know. I also document because I don't know how things are going to go down, and sometimes things are said that I want to recall, and uh,
so here's the some of the audio. Can we play some of the audio here?
I would skip ahead, because in the beginning I'm like, "Hi, are you Tim? Are you so and so?" And there's
Yeah.
been some clips out there that have been really nice. In fact, I just found out Infowars posted a clip, and they had a nice, succinct clip
Oh.
where he basically told me that, well, you can hear it all, folks, in the Substack. You can hear the whole conversation. I don't know where, I don't know. I think they don't call me Mellow Cat, though. They just say, this has been spreading around. It's like a woman. I won't, I
Woman
don't remember.
faces
It's okay.
off
I can send you
pilot.
the link. But it was a good summary, because essentially I was telling him, I'm finding these results, and you're over my house all the time. And I just want
Of
you to
course, my
know
keyboard.
my concerns. Are you aware of what you're contributing to? And this is a job for him, you know?
Yeah.
This is a job for him. And that's it. And actually, when you think about it, he is doing his job, but I want these people who are just doing their job to really start rethinking what you're doing. And then maybe try to make a transition out of it.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
there's a well-known tanker pilot, is what they call themselves. Another viral video where he was a whistleblower
Mm.
and indicated that the U.S. Air Force was behind most of the large operations,
Oh,
not
yeah.
just local. And he had videos, which I'm sure you've seen, where we're not talking about little small local planes.
No.
We're talking about huge tankers.
Big.
And he also said that the tanker pilots make more money than any other pilot, except for Air Force One pilots, and that they absolutely don't care what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're just
Well,
in it for the money.
there are some people that they recruit who have that sort of mentality, right?
Yeah.
Slightly psychopathic. And no, the U.S. So there was a great public records. I know Jim Lee is on there. He's covered this too. The U.S. Air Force. There was I think it was a FOIA, and they've been spraying with their C-130s. They spray adulticides over the populace at night. So there was that 2,000 plus page document. So there's a lot of information out there. I personally, I can't prove it. I really strongly feel that absolutely military is involved, because military works with private sector. They're all involved. There are billionaires backing a lot of this. I'm sure there are multiple ways they're doing it. That, unfortunately, is incredibly hard to prove. You can connect the dots. There are a lot of good researchers out there that have found some of the shell companies and Lockheed Martin connections to this, and you've got whistleblowers talking about it. It's just a matter of time. Oh, by the way, something else I want to say is I subscribe to the National Academies Press. This is the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. And the only reason I follow them and subscribe to them is because they have these elaborate papers, like critical issues in weather modification research. And they talk about quite a bit. And they talk about the solar radiation management. Again, what they do, I find, is they warm people up to the idea of it. They never really admit what they're doing. A lot of what they do, as you know from history, is they experiment. They experiment, and they don't really tell you. And then later on, it comes out. So they've been warming us up. Like, they didn't have cloud seeding news talking about cloud seeding being normal. People didn't really realize how much it was happening. But I've noticed an uptick in the last couple of years that they're talking about cloud seeding like it's been natural. It's wonderful. And thank goodness for the cloud seeding, right? I've learned that if you put too much particulate into the air, you can also prevent water. And I don't like the idea of anyone diverting water or making it fall somewhere where it was not intended by nature, because then you're taking water from other areas where it might have fallen. Aside from contaminating the air with metals, you're diverting water. And in California, the water rights vary, right? You've got PG&E that owns water rights. You've got the Resnick family, right? You've got Saudi Arabia owns some water rights. Water wars. So if you have the money to pay to divert water as you see fit for your operations, I'm just done with people playing God. That's what
You're also diffusing the sunlight,
Oh,
and people don't appreciate that it's not just
no.
rays that, on a superficial level, what we think of as sunlight, but sunlight actually has the informational fields for every life form in this plane that keeps us animated and alive.
Yeah.
And so they're literally cutting us off from the source.
Yes. Well, it's the same thing. It's just as bogus when they say they're going to, block out the sun to save the planet. It's just as bogus as when they say we're going to save the planet from carbon, so we're going to cut down your trees and then we're going to bury them in earthen vaults to store the carbon. Meanwhile, they're going to sell the carbon credits back to the big corporations like Alphabet and Meta, who can then say, well, we're net zero, we're carbon neutral, because they pay for their credits. Meanwhile, they're continually putting the squeeze on the mom and pops and all of us, right?
And it's funny how we're always made to be afraid of things that are just part of nature. Of course, we went through the scared of the sun phase, and everybody's, buying sunscreens and staying out of the sun and everything. And now carbon, we're afraid of carbon. We live in the carbon octave. It's the basis for our biological existence, and somehow it's bad now. But again, shame on people that are dumb enough to believe this stuff, and they just have to suffer the consequences. To bring this back full circle to what the Hopi prophecy is, the last part of that, there was 10 main prophecies. And at the end, they said that the descendants of the Hopi would re-embody at this time and into all racial groups and be the solution. So we were born for this time.
I think so. I feel like it's time. I definitely, with what I've seen here, I'm like, people were ready. People are ready.
I found the InfoWars clip. If we want to play that, should we play it?
That might be kind of
do it. Let's hear the audio again.
Okay, here we go.
I appreciated it because it was shorter than 15 minutes.
Yeah. So
but for those who want to hear the whole thing, go to my Substack, because I actually break down what I did, and it's there.
Awesome.
I'm great.
Okay.
I want to say thanks to my friend who put this together. He heard my audio and he said, I want to make a video with and put it out there. And I said, can you please do it? Cause I'm tired. Because I texted all my friends that night. I said, this is what I did. And so he put this out. 2 of my friends put this out, actually. Go ahead. And now it's just viral, which is amazing. I hear it's viral. I'm not on X or
Hopefully,
Firefox.
now of course I'm getting the weird, circle of death.
Oh God. Okay. Oh yeah.
Come on, X. Come on, Elon.
Right.
You can do better than that. Here we go. Let's try again. Okay.
Here he is. Yeah.
Actually doing the chemtrail spraying and confronted them.
A little louder there
And
too.
recorded the confrontation. Absolutely fascinating interaction. Let's go now to clip number 12. Chemtrails exposed.
We've been trying to reach Jody and you for a long time.
Okay.
And we are tired of you dumping heavy metals all over our county.
Okay. Well, I'm not the one to talk to about that.
No, you are, but you're the one that's doing it. So I've been taking rain samples. I have over 20 samples. And every time you fly, we get high amounts of aluminum, barium, strontium, titanium, magnesium. So I want to know, are you aware of what you're doing? I know you think it's like the increased water supply for sure off in the death zone, but it's not really happening.
Yeah, you can talk to them about that.
Call them and they're not calling me back. So we're now getting really involved and now we're going to bring something legal against your company.
Okay, well, you can talk to them about that.
I know. I want you to know though, like we are real people underneath what you're doing. You spray right over our houses. We hear you. We know you. We see you. We're watching your planes and your patterns. Okay.
Yeah.
Quite good now. You did 2 flights. 2 3-hour flights.
Public knowledge, yeah.
It's not really though. We're talking about all of the metals and flares that you're using. So aluminum, zinc, nickel, silver iodide. You're spraying right over it all the time. And our plant life accessory, they are now selling aluminum genetically modified seeds to grow food because our soil is so contaminated. And so what you're spraying is not good for the environment and it's not good for the people because there's an early onset dementia, there's Alzheimer's, things that are starting to happen to people's health. And I really do believe there's a linkage to what we're breathing in the environment every day. And you guys spray it in November through April. It's your yearly contract. I'm aware of that too. So I just wanted to meet the pilot and say, where's Jody? We'll call Jody. I think Leslie was the other one. Leslie Fisher? No. It's another Fisher.
Yes, that'll be his place.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's their responsibility. That's not our
I
responsibility.
understand, yeah. But the money that you're receiving to do this is coming from, is it taxpayers that are paying for this?
That's not my department.
I want you to be aware. Do you have family?
Yeah, I have family.
I have families too, I know. So we're outside and we hear your plane over us all the time. I've been tracking this for a long time and we have tried to get supervisors involved and they're clueless, they're not informed. According to the California codes and law, they should have notified our supervisor because they're doing this to benefit it. Okay? But it's not. It's happening over, well, it might be, but it's happening over our area. Okay, Sonora, Groveland, Culverville. You're doing your little figure-8 loops. My 20 rain sample will show you that on the days that you're spraying, or releasing your flares, we have copious amounts of aluminum, magnesium, there's been some barium, strontium, but titanium is weird. Is titanium also in your flares? That's unique for me. So I want you to know that there are health impacts that impact to soil, plant life, all of those things. And when we do this, there's a whole community watching. You don't know what to do.
I understand your opinion.
It's not like that though. I'll show you my sample, but
I don't want to see your sample.
why is that?
You can take those.
But you're flying the plane, but then how do I
So there you go. Confirmed. Chemtrail pilots perfectly aware of what they're doing.
So
What's amazing to me, why I'm so emotional, is because I have been trying to reach people for so long. I have done lots of things like this. I've confronted people. I've done protests. I've worked so hard, and I feel like I've been beating my head against the wall just so to see how much. I mean, it's on Infowars. My friends this morning said it's on Infowars, and I was like, whoa. I mean, I'm just so grateful that people, that people are interested. That's all. Sorry. It's really
People
you're
are
making
beyond-
a huge difference in this time. This is the Great Awakening. And so your voice and all our voices are needed more than ever. We're winning. And we have to be strong for just a little bit longer because they're going to step up their efforts for a while. And but this makes us stronger.
This is the power of one individual. This is the thing that people get they think it's so daunting. It's such a huge issue, but literally one individual such as yourself can inspire thousands to take action. It doesn't take much, actually. And one thing that we talk about, and what I love about this clip on so many levels, is not only did you take your life force out to that place, and you set forth your will to do this and to confront this guy. That is an energetic force that ripples across the timeline. That has a lot of power. And when people see this, they are inspired. With people in the chat going, I'm going to go do that now. I'm going to get that app and I'm going to go do that, right? So that's one way it ripples. The other way it ripples is there's an energetic, right? That those who are here to help us, the higher hierarchy of spiritual beings, need us to do the action for them to step in and help. So that is a very important thing. And then, Bear, I know you have stuff to say here, but one other thing too is, you brought up to the actor, the man doing the deed, right? And see how he was trying to deflect. Oh, it's not me, it's the company. I'm just the guy. No, in law, he is culpable, and we can talk about something called a notice of liability, where we can literally notice that individual for acts of trespassing against our own anatomy, poisoning us and all that. So there are ways that we can take action against that individual for doing what he's doing. Bear.
Yeah, in his personal capacity, and what you've done is uncovered the methodology to track down individuals. And it's not like we want to ruin him or his family, but if he gets taken to the woodshed and loses everything, then that example will make other people think twice about doing those things. And also in law, there's something called the moving party. So the action you took there, just with that confrontation, you're the moving party. Number one, you're in the truth, but also in law, as a moving party, you have all the power. And you can always tell who has the power in those exchanges. We think we're helpless on the ground with these guys spraying us. Well, when you confront them, what do? They subterfuge, they deny, oh, it's not my job, I don't know, you're going to have to go talk to somebody else. All of a sudden, you just undress them for who they really are. They're weak, opportunistic individuals, and they need to stop what they're doing. So a combination of what you're doing with what Michael is alluding to is the solution.
I think so.
And also, we have exposure going on a larger level, not to make it into a political thing, but there is something happening in our country right now, and it doesn't matter what side you're on, but it's happening nevertheless. And somebody like Bobby Kennedy, who is getting in, now all of a sudden it's a national dialogue, and now you have a mass awakening. Well, those people are going to be shamed before they even think of taking that job in the first place. So the worm is turning, and it is because of efforts like yourself.
Yeah, I feel that way. At the very least, I thought that I know now, no matter what, whenever he goes back up, he's going to think about the fact that a woman came out to find him at the airport. Mm-hmm. The same thing goes for the pilot that I met in Sacramento. When I told him, I said, I've been here 6 hours. He said, you have? For me? And I said, yes, I'm so upset by what's going on, and I want to talk to you. He was a really friendly guy. His name was Tim. And they are often, I think, single pilots, or, they're just not, they're doing their job and they're out. The guy that I spoke to that night, this cloud seeder, he sounded Canadian. So I don't even know if these men live here. So it's a lot easier to go somewhere else. Their planes fly out from North Dakota and they stay here at the airport for the duration of the season, and so they're out here. And I don't know if these guys are away from home, is my guess. They're not locals. They brought the plane here, so they're probably here in a hotel somewhere.
This seems like a much more tangible cause than some of the other, aerosoling going up there, right? That is more maybe military or stuff that's not as recognizable. There is a gentleman that Bear and I know, and I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with him, by the name of Cal Washington, and he's got an association called In Power Movement, and they currently have 3 mass action notices of liabilities for 5G towers, vaccines, and smart meters. And what they do is they go after the CEOs, they go after the power people behind the companies. through mass action notices of liability, where they put them on notice personally that they are liable and that they will take, attack their bank account, and they've had multiple CEOs actually step down throughout the world. So this seems like a no-brainer to me, to go after these kind of companies that are doing this, and go after the CEOs, because this guy's going to deflect. Yeah. And so what InPower does is they don't go after the guy setting up the tower. They don't go after the person who is checking the meters, right? They go after the top dogs that are running the corporations.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it is a pretty interesting. So that's just one solution. And then another solution, of course, we talk about a lot, is remediation on your own home front, using orgone, there's all sorts of ways to actually counter just at least the after effects of this stuff over your land. And that's another way. But I do like going into the heart. And as Bear says, maybe there will be a national conversation. I'm skeptical personally. I put no faith in these characters. But that being said, there does seem to be a groundswell of awareness around this.
And on the solution level, we farm here, and we've noticed in the last few years that plants are suffering. Things that were once thriving are all of a sudden just burning from the inside out. So one of the measures people can do in their home garden, or if they're on the farm, we have brewers here that of microorganisms, and we dump those microorganisms constantly in our soil, because those soil bacteria will then eat up and digest the metals and neutralize them. It'll detoxify your soil. And then of course you really want to pay attention to, the microorganisms come first and then the worms. So you dig trenches and you import more worms, just you can't have enough. So there's things where you can really detoxify the soil, bring it alive again. It's going to grow better food for you and everything. But we've had to take extra measures. As far as your regular body is concerned, in my profession, we have ways of testing to see where certain bodies have little unique blockages and things that need to be prioritized. And that's helpful. But anybody can do just very gentle chelation techniques to get heavy metals out. And these are things I'm sure you're aware of, Kat. Things like zeolite, good quality purified clintoptolite, zeolite. Their minerals themselves are naturally occurring, and when you take them into your body, then they latch onto the heavy metals. They have a chelating effect, and then you excrete them out of your body. So people should really be doing a lot of that now. Another one that will sound kind of strange to a lot of people, but it's the best thing you could possibly do, is if you understand, our lymphatic and liver system is a filtration system, no different than the filtration system in my truck. We live on dirt roads, so we have to change the oil and the oil filters more often out here because we're off-roading a lot. Well, the fact is our bodies are off-roading all the time now with the things that we're exposed to. So it would really be helpful to do coffee enemas. These were developed by nurses during World War I and II, and we could, go through the whole history on how they knew that would do beneficial things to the liver and help pain management and everything. But what it does do is when you take coffee into the lower bowel, it bypasses the digestive system, and it immediately creates a liver flush or a dump. So again, likening your liver to the oil filter on my truck, you need to change it more often. So if you do a weekly or a couple times a week coffee enema, and I know a lot of people are rolling their eyes at this, but it's, this is medicine that's as old as the hills. Jesus talked about it in the Gospel of the Essenes, doing this kind of thing, not coffee, but so the coffee will create that purging. Your liver dumps all the stuff. And the proof of the pudding to me, since I'm more of a clinician, not just looking at numbers like a research scientist, is I look at results on the ground. And over the years with people that came in with cancer and all these diseases and things, when we detoxed, did a lot of these measures, they got better, along with other things that we did. In present day, all the people that I get daily reports from that know how to do these things, and they say, yeah, I woke up with a headache, they sprayed us last night, or whatever symptom you have, they do a coffee enema, feel better instantly. I mean, literally within moments after you're done better. Now, if you aren't doing things like this, all of those toxins have to find a home in your body. And when they find a home in your body, the body is very clever at sequestering these toxins into different little nooks and crannies. But there comes a time when these little deposit areas, it could be in a joint, it could be in an organ, it could be in connective tissue somewhere, and they kind of wall it off so the toxins aren't circulating freely to create a systemic problem. But then that creates an acidosis, a fermentation, and then the body will try to bring in more oxygen in the area by growing more cells, in order to turn the anaerobic activity, around. And then those proliferation of cells, we then turn around and call cancer. So you don't want these things accumulating in your body, and they're very simple, inexpensive things that anybody can do at home. And if you look up in the sky, and if you're smart enough to know that those aren't regular contrails, then you should really be taking proactive measures, not only in your community, but with your own family and your own body.
I look at the fog. That's been the talk lately. I have more pictures in my phone of the sky and the air and the patterns over time, and that fog was crazy. So even that, I drink distilled water. That's something that I've learned to do. I started distilling my own water just to make sure that was absolutely free and clear of. Our tap water is terrible. I don't know. I hope that we can reprioritize having cleaner tap water. It's terrible. Wish we had well water, but anyway.
We're fortunate we have natural springs up here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's great.
But distilled is the best option other than that. Yeah.
Well, I wrote down some things. I've never tried a coffee enema, but I'm not against giving that a go. So thank you for that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's been around for over 100 years. It's not a new age concept or something. And it's used in the top cancer clinics across the world.
Amazing. Thank you.
So, what's your plans moving forward now? With what you've discovered with this company? Obviously we talked about some solutions, but.
Well, what I've done is I found out that this is something, thank you for bringing this up. In California, if you're in California, they have 35 air districts. And in those 35 air districts, they have a hearing board, and it's a medical professional, an engineer, lawyer, and then 2 members of the public. So I've applied to be on our county's hearing board. Apparently, they haven't had a hearing board since 2020 and probably before. So again, nobody's been really keeping track of the air quality in my county. So I have applied at January 14th. I applied and I made an announcement, and you probably saw that on my Substack as well. And I'm trying to encourage people. You don't have to be an expert. You can just be somebody who's passionate and you just want to be in the know, and connected to CARB. So that's going to be my access point. If I'm on this hearing board, I'll be able to have more direct access, because as a regular person just calling to ask questions, they'll pass you off or they'll ignore you. There's no urgency to get back to you. Something else I've said is when you are contacting your representatives, you're going to want to copy all of them on the email if you have concerns or questions. I've gone over this. Raynette had an interview where we really talked at length about all the different ways we can take action and track the flights. And I would like to, in the future, I would like to host a how-to. I want to just, anyone that's curious about using flight radar, I'll walk through with them. I'd like them to do it with me and have them ask any questions, because I think sometimes you just need someone to hold your hand walking through, zooming in, tapping on an aircraft, knowing where to look, and then how to take the N number, the unique registration number, and looking it up on the FAA's website to then find out who the plane's registered to. This is a tool that I cannot recommend more. I have friends out here now that watch the aircraft that go to fires. We know about a fire before we're notified about a fire, because we can see the aircraft going and circling, and you learn to identify familiar patterns. So that's a wonderful tool. And I'm self-taught. I'm, again, not an expert, always learning. So there's that. So I've applied for that board. That board has not decided yet. The supervisors have not yet made their decision. And then also what I need to do is, there are people in my county now that have reached out. So this has been a wonderful way for me to now get, because I'm not out there all the time. I'm home with my garden. I'm not in the scene. So this has been a wonderful way to get people interested. And I have so many messages now where I live here and I live here and let's get together. And so now begins the core group formation so that we can all help each other, and I can share my resources with them and we can work together, because sometimes I have just felt absolutely tired, at all the things that I'm looking into, and I think, well, how much more can I do? And so there's always more to do, but I'm going to try to bring my focus more into this now, because it appears that the momentum is here. And so I'm going to take this and give it more focus again.
Well, every one of these presentations, you're reaching thousands of people, and they're in turn passing it on. So it's going exponential. We're at that critical mass point now. So take heart.
It's amazing. That was a little scary too.
Yeah.
So a little scary. Like I was like, what? How? I kind of felt like I was in a dream for a couple of days. Like, did this really happen? How did this all happen? And I was a little nervous about it. And then I thought, well, why am I nervous? And I think it's because I felt the pressure of needing to be the expert and needing to have all the solutions and the way forward. And I don't have all of the solutions, and I don't necessarily have the way forward. What I would love help with are environmental lawyers that can look at the potential violations that I believe I've seen thus far. And I need help with maybe writing a cease and desist, or maybe figuring out what the next step would be. I could use some guidance there. So it would be, I don't have the means to pay for it, but I just want, if anyone's willing to help me look over some things, I'll be happy to share what I have and go from there.
There are ways to use the court system. The court system, remember, it's not Article 3 courts as established by the Constitution in Article 3. We have uniform commercial courts. So it's a rigged game from day one. On the other hand, you can still use those court systems very cleverly if you do it a little bit out of the box, like what Mike was, talking about as far as
Pro se in a way.
Well,
on your own.
Well, yeah, sure.
Okay.
But more so than that, you do an affidavit of facts. For instance, if somebody is trying to sue you, they get a lawyer and they do an affidavit of facts, and then you have to answer everything, 100% of the points, doesn't matter how many they're accusing you of. And, but if you're the moving party, you bring that against them. You have an affidavit, just facts, not opinions, not anything, just what you have, what the data that you've collected and so forth, the names, the places. And then you present that to the parties. And then you also, like any lawsuit, you give them a time frame in order to respond. If they don't respond to every single point, truthfully, of course, a lot of times they'll ignore it. They'll say, well, who are you? Well, if they ignore it, then you already won your judgment. But you give them a certain time period, and then if they don't follow through, then you give them another grace period, an opportunity to cure, they call it. And then you put them in default, and then that default, you bring it to the court, and you have it all notarized, because the most powerful judge anywhere is your local notary public, because they're operating in the private. And when you have that witnessed, judges in the courts are only referees in the case that two adults can't settle their own affairs. But if you know how to do it out of the courts in private and then use the courts, then that is a judgment where you have already won.
I love it.
And then you have to know how to enforce it. It gets a little trickier from there, but it's that simple. And you already have the data, with that data there, I could sit down and do that whole process probably in a couple hours. You've already done all the hard stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking too, that was another thing you just reminded me. I'd like to put it into one document, like the dates and times that I contacted the Air Pollution Control District, CARB, who I spoke with, what was our correspondence, and I want all in one document. So it's sort of a timeline for anyone that I can just say, here's the process, right? Yeah. Because I've done an assortment of videos. I have 10 hard drives with floating screenshots and articles, and it's not very well organized. I've been moving on the go, on the fly.
Yeah. Well, an affidavit of facts actually organizes you. And then, of course, it's presented to a party, say a pilot. And then the only way the pilot can respond to that is either in truth, yeah, I was the one that did that. I was spraying this stuff, and you get a lot more clever about it than that. And if there's nothing he can refute without perjuring himself. So more often than not, people don't respond and then you win, but you win either way. That's
good.
the power of what Mike brought up.
I have a lot of written documentation and email correspondence where I asked a lot of questions and they didn't always have the answers. So in a way, that was my written correspondence was showing that there was a lot they didn't know.
Yeah.
And they had to then look into it to get back to me with what they could find.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately, the one contact I had for about a year retired. So it's like, starting over, but.
So what haven't we talked about yet today that you'd like to bring up?
Actually, I don't know. I think we've had a pretty broad conversation, and I think I touched on at least a little bit of all the things that I have had my hands in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I want to just, I don't know what to say other than I feel really grateful to be alive and here in these times. And I'm so happy and grateful to see, because again, in 2020, I was the enemy, right? I was the science denier, and I was doxxed, as you know, and my husband was pulled into it, and he had nothing to do with what I was doing. And it was a very painful time for me. I'm still processing those years, but it's really nice finally to have some support and to have people say,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, thank you. What a change. Feels really wonderful. And I'm so grateful for people that are out there that care. And I'm grateful
Absolutely.
for you reaching out to me and having me on to further connect with like-minded people. It's lovely. So I'm feeling very hopeful.
Well, we don't say it lightly when we say you're doing heroic things. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Bear.
And speaking of connecting, where can folks connect with you?
Well, I don't have most mainstream platforms, so it would be on Substack, and I could give also my I want to give my email. Let's do Substack for now.
In the show notes, we do have your Substack and your BitChute channel.
Okay, that's good. And so I think, but it's better to reach me on Substack, and because I know there's videos out there floating around, I'm not responding to anything that's on X or Instagram because I don't have those platforms. I refuse to use those platforms. Well, not X so much. I forgot my password for that one, but I'm keeping it simple. So Substack is probably the best way.
I love Substack. I've really enjoyed that platform, and they've maintained what they've said they were going to do, which is respect free speech, and it's been great to see. We do have a private platform that is a wonderful community. I'd love to invite you on there. Just hook you up with a free executive membership.
Great.
And we have Jim Lee's in there actually.
Hi, Jim.
And then there's just a lot of powerful souls, and it's a place that's in the private, so it's nice because we can discuss things without fear of agencies seeing it or tracking it. We control it all, and there's just powerful souls in there, and it's wonderful. And we do a monthly call and everything. So yeah, I'll send you a special code to get signed up there. Or I'll get you dialed in there.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, it's just it's powerful times, right? I keep harping on this, but community is so crucial, like you're saying, right? It's what's been impactful for you today on this is like you're meeting new people, you're meeting new souls that are on the same tip. And for Bear and I, that's been the most powerful sort of thing that's come out of since 2020. Us really started doing this like 2018, and that's been like for us like the most. We've had our minds blown every week with new people we meet, and we're not alone. We're not alone.
No, I know. I'm finding more and more of my tribe or my family, and I've got my slogan shirts and my bumper stickers. So I don't have a lot of time for the superficial talk, and I prefer being at home with my animals. I love my family time, and most of my connection comes from these sorts of conversations with like-minded people.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have more locals in place. I've got some good friends out here now that I've met, the right people, so.
We're not too far from you.
You're not? Oregon. No, wait.
Well, we're on the border of California and Oregon.
Oh, you
So
are. Oh, I did.
we're in-
Okay. Well, then good. Well, next time you have the sky thing, was that your event?
yeah, so we do Music and Sky. We're kind of on pause as we're developing the Music and Sky Village. So we're actually going from just doing events to actually creating a sovereign village where people will live full time.
Cool.
But yeah, we just did one in NorCal actually, and Renette was speaking at it. She spoke about this specific topic on Friday.
Yes.
It's fantastic. About 800 folks camping for 4 days, all
Yes.
super awake and awesome. So yeah, next time for sure. Like we'd love
would
to
love
invite
it.
you to come out and talk, and it's so great. People are doing like ice baths and yoga, and
Yes.
everyone's just having these deep conversations. And actually, there is a really great event coming up called Confluence that our friend Alex Zach does. Dawn Lester's in the chat. I was just saying it's going to be great to see her again there. But yeah, that's one in Texas. So there are these events that kind of springing up everywhere. And that's super important for us to come together in person and have these discussions and you know, develop that community in person.
I'll plan to be at one in the future. That would be nice.
Awesome.
Right.
Well, cool. Anything else, guys? I think we've covered the full gamut
think we're
today.
good.
Yeah.
Great chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure to both of you here, and I look forward to staying in touch as well.
And if you're ever in our neck of the woods, we're probably about 8 miles or 8 hours rather north.
Yeah.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
not too bad. Yeah, a little camp out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're on the
Yeah,
river,
you're off
plenty
grid.
of room for you.
Yeah, good. I love
Kids
that.
would love to jump in the river.
Oh, that would be amazing. I
Yeah.
could use a little break like that.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Well,
nice.
so-
Hey, come hang out with Sasquatch.
Yeah,
Um,
right. And his little girl.
Yeah. Well, hey, everyone, remember it's Mellow Cat. That's with the K.substack.com. And her BitChute channel is there as well. Everything's in the show notes below. Please go support her, subscribe, follow her, give her a thumbs up, throw her a comment. It really will help her out. And of course, that'll help us out. If you resonated with this chat today, throw us a thumbs up. Share with your friends and family. Really, that's how we do it. We collaborate, we cooperate, and we're not here. See that the beast system, it's all about, you know, everyone, they're all fighting for their scraps, right, of what they can get. Where the alternative, I don't even say alternative anymore, right? We are becoming the mainstream. We're doing it in a much more organic, true way, and by supporting each other. So yeah, throw us a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and remember to get outside, get your feet in the dirt, go plant something, go show Mother Nature some love. She'll show it right back to you in spades, and that's really the best solution. We love you, and we'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Love you guys. Peace.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Kat.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure. Thanks so much.